So let's start our assignment 3. In this assignment, we should modify file permissions. It is step 1. So we have to change permissions of file we created in assignment 2, and we have to use the command chmod, which means change mode command, and we have to modify the permissions to 6, 4, and 4. So we should write this command to our terminal. Let's open our terminal. So we can write this command in our terminal. Change mode my new file. My new folder. Txt. So in order to check, so basically what it does, 6 stands for that the owner, which is in our case it is us, we can read and we can write this file. So that's why we have R and W. So R stands for 4 and 2 it's writing. And next case we have other group that can only read, they cannot write or they cannot execute. That's why they have only 4. And others can only read, so they also cannot write or they cannot like execute our file. So in order to check this, we can use LCL command to check whether our work it is works or not. Oh, okay. LCL my new folder, my file.txt. So we did here a little bit wrong. Let's try. So we can see from here that we changed our permissions, which stands for read and write. So the owner, which in our case it is us, we can read and write, and others group can only read. So it is read, and they cannot write or they cannot execute. And others also can also read. They cannot write or execute. So let's jump to the next step. So we see we did verify permissions and we see the commands. And step 3, let's change our change mode to different permissions. Let's use, for example, 7, 4, and 4. Let's try this command. So change mode 7, 4, 4. My new folder, my file.txt. So in order to check if whether we changed our permissions, we can still use LCL commands to check. So LCL command, my new folder, my file.txt. So from here, we can see that it is a little bit different than previous example. So our number is 7, which means that we have full permission. It's not just read and write. It is read, write, and execute. That's why we have 7, and X execute stands for 1. So that's why we have not 6 but 7. And others group can do all, they can only read, they cannot write or execute, and others also can only read. So this one is successful. Let's try another one, which is change mode 700. And in this one, we can see my new folder, my file .txt. So in order to check, we can use LCL command to check. So LCL, my new folder, my file .txt. So we can see this completely different than previous example because here we giving full permission with to owner. We can read, we can write, we can execute, but others, groups and others cannot do anything. That's why we have full permission, which is 7, and 0 permissions to a group and 0 permissions to others. That's why it is 700. So let's do another next step. So we can use whoami command to find out the user, and we can use chown command to change ownership of that file. Let's find whoami. Let's try this command. Whoami. So we can see it is a VBox user. I didn't change my username, so it is a VBox user. And we can use chown command to change ownership of that file because previously as you're seeing, we changed our permissions that only owner can execute the files. So we can change the owner, and even us cannot, with our VBox user, we cannot access that file. So let's change that. Uh, so let's try sudo chown, let's say new student, and we will say vbox user, my new folder .txt. So it's asking for a password. We should just enter our password. So we can check this word if it's worked or not using uh, LCL command. Okay, my new folder .txt. So here you can see that we have new student, which is a new owner for us, and VBox user also here. So this means that it worked successfully. And next one is we can check disk usage of directories using do command. So let's try this with display size of contrast. Let's check do h it was my new folder, and here we can see we can see size of directory and its content usually, and it is small because we don't have a lot of things in our file. That's why. So let's jump to next step, which is creating multiple files in a loop. So we will create if we do this file empty file. So let's do that. For I in okay 1 to 5 G touch folder file 1 .txt. Let's double check so we will not get error since done. So in order to check this, we can use LCL command to check whether it's working or not. LC my new folder. So here you can see we have 6 files now. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and our main file. It is my file. Txt. So it is working clearly. And let's try another one. And we have compressed a directory. Use the tar command to compress your newly created directory into tarball, compressed archive. So let's try this command. Okay, let's create this command. It is tar gc my new folder dot tar dot ts my new folder. Here, so we created this, my new folder. So it didn't open because we previously changed the permissions to 700. That's why we couldn't open. So we can check using LLC also. Let's see, for example. So we can see we have a new folder tar gz in our, let's say, Ubuntu files. So that's pretty much. So it is working. It is here. Next step, understanding permissions. Linux file permission. Who can read, write, but read and write. So previously we've seen the examples of, for example, 6, 6, 4, and 4. It is file permissions. In order to understand how, I think um, we can explain more about this. For example, let's go to our file, which I created. Let's see here about file permission. It is numerical representation. It's really important to understand our topics in our questions about, for example, understanding basically Linux file permissions. So here we have 4. 4 represents read. So basically in our terminal usually we have just a letter R. It means we can read, and the number it represents is 4. And 2 is for write. Usually we have W in our terminal if it's write. And we have 1 for execute. Usually in terminal it is X. So, for example, in order to understand more clearly, for example, if we have a 7 for the owner of that file, it means that we can read, we can write, and we can execute. So the sum of all of this, 4 plus 2 plus 1 is 7. So basically, it is full permissions. We can read, write, and execute. In previous example, for example, we had, for example, here, uh, change mode 700. We can see that we can read, write, and execute. That's why it says full permission. It is 7. And let's go to another one. We have 6, which is usually read and write. So the owner, we can, and depends on whoever it is, we can read and write. It is 6 plus 4, it is 4 plus 2, so it is equals to 6. So we can only read and write. We cannot execute. So that's why there is a minus sign. R represents read and W is write, and minus sign it is we cannot execute. It means. And we have a 5. 5 it is read and execute. So 4 plus 1. So it is equals to 5. That's why usually in terminal, if we see something like R minus X, it means that we can read and we can execute, but we cannot write. And we have a 4. So 4 basically means we can only read. We cannot execute. We cannot execute. We cannot write. And 0, it means we cannot write. We cannot read. We cannot execute. So let's see in our example. For example, here we have 2 zeros, which represent for groups and others, not for owners, but for groups and others. They have 0 permission, which means that they cannot read, they cannot write, they cannot execute. So that's uh, like simple uh, explanation of like a numerical representation of permissions. It is really important to understand this kind of things. And last but not least, for example, we have very popular, for example, 644, which means read and write, and group for group it is read only, and for others also read only. It's usually common for files where us owners can read and write, but others can only read. And we also can have a 755, which is owner can read, write, and execute, but groups and others can read and execute, but they cannot write. And we have also read and write as 600. We have read and write for the owner, but others do not have any permission. They cannot read, they cannot write, they cannot execute. And we have also 777, which is full permission to owner. They can write, they can read, they can execute. And groups and others also can read, write, and execute. I mean, it is giving full permission to everyone. Um, Generally, it's not recommended because of security reasons. It's not a good idea that your file can be accessible by others and groups. They can write and execute your file. it's not recommended. So it's a little bit problematic, let's say. And last one is different permission levels for understanding relations between users. And so in a expand understanding ownership, you learn how to use. So that's pretty much it. We saw the chmod 700. We saw the chmod 77. Uh, let's try this. Okay.